We've already talked about how human sacrifice is something people thought didn't happen in the ancient Egyptian culture, but we actually now know did, and happened in exactly the kind of circumstances that we find in the book of Abraham. There's a really interesting part of that, and that is that Abraham is nearly sacrificed because he's preaching against idolatry. That's in the book of Abraham, but it's not in Genesis. However, we've since found a lot of ancient texts that say that exact same thing. It's a really consistent tradition that wasn't known or available to Joseph Smith in his day. But now we can see that many ancient cultures understood that Abraham was preaching against idolatry and was nearly killed because of that. A lot of these things can be found in a volume produced by some of my colleagues as they've translated all of these ancient texts. This volume is called Traditions About the Early Life of Abraham, and it just goes through and presents text after text after text that are all ancient about Abraham. But as you go through there, you'll find so many elements that are in the Pearl of Great Price that are not in the Bible that Joseph Smith couldn't have known about. My colleagues in this volume write this: one might dismiss a single element found in a non-biblical tradition that parallels the book of Abraham as mere coincidence. But when a large number of such elements come together from diverse times and places, they overwhelmingly support the book of Abraham as an ancient text. There are far too many references to Terah as an idolater, Abraham as a sacrificial victim, Abraham as an astronomer, and Abraham as a missionary to lightly dismiss their antiquity. A copy of the chart they create in this book that shows parallels between the book of Abraham and other ancient texts is astounding as you see the number of things that match up perfectly. And these things weren't known in Joseph Smith's day. The only thing that Joseph Smith had that contained some of these stories was Josephus. And he did have that and he read it. There is another text that has some of these elements. It's the book of Jasher. That wasn't published until after Joseph Smith had translated the book of Abraham. It was published before he published his copy of the book of Abraham, but it was after his translation, which was passed around among members of the church, and these things were known before the book of Jasher was available. Another really interesting thing is that name Olishem. It's the name of a place in the text of the book of Abraham where Abraham talks about the plains of Olishem, a name that supposedly Joseph Smith would have just made up. But in fact, as we've translated some ancient texts not available in Joseph Smith's day, we find from two texts, one about contemporary with Abraham and one from just a little earlier, that Olishem or Ulishem is the name of an actual place from that time period. It would put Abraham's story taking place just a little west of where we think it took place, but that's one of the fascinating things going on right now. As we compare the book of Abraham with other ancient texts, we're starting to understand Abraham's world better. And it's becoming more and more clear to us that some of the assumptions we made about Abraham and his life may not be correct, and that as we couple the book of Abraham evidence with the evidence we're getting from ancient texts, it actually creates a more convincing and detailed story than Genesis gives us.